The area of the structure of the business is one that's critically important, and one where you do need to take time in working out how it's organised, and to take the opportunity of getting some expert advice. Because if you can appreciate, once you set the structure of your fees, you're pretty much committed to being with those, so you're stuck if you don't get them right. There's a number of things you need to look at. Particularly, you've got your annualised franchise fees, so that's the ongoing fees that you collect on a weekly or a monthly basis. You've got to review what you need to make those from your point of view to make your business viable, and what is appropriate for the franchisee so that their business works and they make a good profit. You look at also how you structure your product. If you produce or you supply the product to the franchise, you've got to work out your margins. And then you look at other services as well. There's areas like advertising and marketing fees. You may have your own marketing department. You may prepare the advertising. You may need to raise a charge for that. Then there's things like additional training. There are conferences to be organised. There are maybe accounting fees if you look after the accounts for the franchisees. And then also, if you arrange the purchasing of the product, which is pretty common, there's the possibility of negotiating with the suppliers for rebates. And this is an area which can be very ticklish. My personal feeling is you should always disclose the rebates, so there's no question mark in your franchisee's mind as to whether you're making additional income on the side as they see it. And it's something which you may want to look at in some detail. You may, in fact, if you negotiate rebates, put those into the advertising fund. The other fees you need to look at are your renewal fees, what the franchisee pays if they want to take another term at the end of their first 5 years or whatever the period might be. And also, if they sell their franchise, you need to see what their assignment fees are going to be. Once you've reached that stage of working out your fees and so forth, you've then got to look at the structure for the business. And there you're looking at your initial fees. When a franchisee commences, how much are they going to pay for their initial franchise fee? What does it cost you to set a franchise up? And that includes the money you spend on getting your documentation, getting the system together, and an element of goodwill that you deserve for having developed the business and gone through the expense of really getting the operation in the way it is today, up and running. There are, apart from the initial franchise fees, there are fit-out fees to look at. There may be plant and equipment, there may be stock, and there are training fees. So you've got to be very careful in making sure you allocate enough funding. Once you've worked all that out, you're then at the situation where you need to look very closely at the structure of the operation. By that I mean the corporate structure. Do you operate at the moment as a sole trader? Are you just a registered business name? Do you operate in a partnership? It's been recommended by many advisors that you have a proprietary limited company to limit your indemnity, and often you would have a holding company, and that holding company would then have a subsidiary company which in turn holds your intellectual property, your trademarks, and owns the manuals, the documentation. It may seem a bit complicated, but they subsequently will then sub-license that to your franchising company, and that is the one that operates the entity and manages the franchising rights and so on. The reason for that is particularly so if you want to sell the franchise business, you can do that without it being unnecessarily complicated and involving your own structure. So just to reiterate, the structure of the business is probably the fundamental before you get going. You need to review all these elements very closely. You need to spend a lot of time looking at spreadsheets and playing around with different percentages to see what really works, and to make sure that you, both yourself and the franchisee, are going to have the cash flow and the net profit to make that investment a worthwhile return.